We are Chris and
Ashley.
Ashley, and we
don't
are
practice.
We don't practice. We
just
are
get up here.
a marriage surviving sexual addiction and infidelity. We recently had some great questions asked to us, and we really appreciate when it is because it
questions
helps
are
us,
helpful because
yes. And it helps us to know if we're doing this for any reason at all, because most of the time
it helps me.
We wanted to, it helps me too, I guess too. So if nothing else, we
but
just hear ourselves talk.
Your questions help us know what to help ourselves with.
Yes.
In talking.
So we're very thankful for some of the questions that came in because I think that this is something that a lot of people are wondering as well. One of the big ones was the resentment, how they deal with, and again, like Chris said, he doesn't love the word resentment.
Yeah, resentment seems wrong.
But how they deal with when the wife is in, or the spouse, whoever, is in trigger trauma mode, and they keep bringing up things that are hurting them, how that feels defeating or whatever to the husband and everything. So he did a whole video on that question, that first question, so you can refer to that one. I'm going to just say the other questions and then kind of go down each one of them. So it was, how did I encourage my husband? What were some of the things that I did to encourage him during his recovery process and still is recovering? How did the occasional slip-ups affect me and what I did with those? Practical ways to support him, including faith. One of the questions came in and said that they are a faith-based person. And so if faith is part of what has helped us, then to include that, and we will gladly do that because faith is probably one of the number one things that I feel has helped us through. Yeah. How did I deal with intrusive thoughts when they came? And how has those intrusive thoughts affected our intimacy? Has it affected it, and how? So those are the questions that were asked. They're great questions, and we just kind of want to go through some of them. So how did I encourage Chris? I'm going to say a couple of pieces that I remember, but he might be a better one to answer this one. So how I encouraged Chris, I remember some of the things that I would do is I put together small care packages for him, little things like that.
Big.
Well, big care packages. I don't know, little things that kept, because he did feel so often in the beginning defeated by my constant, I'm triggered. Mm-hmm. And he's sitting there going, again? We have to talk about this again? Are you serious? And I'm sitting there I'm dying over here, I would try to counteract with some of those ways by giving care packages and writing notes and sending texts and things like that throughout the days of, I do believe in you, and I do have faith in you, and I do think you can get through this, and I do think we can get through this. Things like that I do think is very helpful. And then right when you go back to a trigger trauma response, you guys are right back into a hard place, and that's not fun. And I get that, and it's not oh, here's a Dr. Pepper and a sunflower seed bag and everything's okay. But I do feel like those little gestures did help along the way. I also, they talked about faith in the question. I would read scriptures or different talks or podcasts or things like that. And if they were really helpful for me, I would share what was helpful for me so that he could see that I was trying to heal and that I was trying to forgive and that I was trying to get through it. So I'd share that piece. But then the other piece is I'd look for things to be helpful for him throughout the day because he's busy at work and all these things. So I'd find a scripture and I'd be like, oh, I bet this will give him some strength just to make it through his day. Those are the things that I can remember. Do you have anything to add to that of how I encouraged you?
Yeah, a lot of those things. Notes all the time that would talk about, I'm so thankful for the changes you're making, how it's bringing us closer together, the person you're becoming. She'd tell me she sees me, for who I am, good qualities, not for what I've done. Mm-hmm. So things like that just are really encouraging. I remember right in the very beginning of all this, you obviously you wonder, is your marriage going to survive? And I remember one of the things, as you're discussing that, was her telling me that no matter what, she's going to be my biggest cheerleader in hoping that I overcome this addiction.
Yeah. So whether we divorce or not,
whether we're divorced or not, she's going to be there. And that's huge, because you think about what she's been through. Now, in no way should this encouragement be like this duty of I have to encourage my spouse to, or else they're going to stray off the path and slip and things. It should never be that. But encouragement's nice, and for the addict as well. Thankful notes and things, or just expressing gratitude for, thank you for being with me through this and helping me through this.
Yeah, it's not like gonna be something that helps the situation as far as addiction goes. It's just helpful for the marriage part. I think
it brings us closer together, knowing that we're working and helping each other.
It's support, and so those are some of the things that we did. How did the occasional slip-ups affect me? In this particular question, they talked about, listen, when my spouse has a slip-up, it does really hurt, and it does.
Yeah.
And then when something around the slip-up occurs again, whether it's, they have to go out of town for work, or they're alone at the office in the morning surrounded by computers, things like that happen with us all the time. It is absolutely inevitable for the spouse that has been affected to be terrified. The fears of trauma. I once had a counselor talked about those being PTSD. And when I first heard that, I was like, what? No way. But the more that they went over it, the more I was like, yeah, I can totally see how this is totally just something that sparks. And I'm talking like I could be in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and something will come up and trigger me, and I'll get terrified and scared and freeze, like all these different things that will happen because of things that have happened in the past. And that is, again, I'm fully aware that it's hard for my husband, because it's one of those things where he's like, I haven't done anything for a long time, and how can you get mad at me for something I haven't even done yet? This is unfair.
What if I actually have?
Yeah.
I mean, if this is now a slip, so if I've slipped now, okay, how does that slip affect you? Well, that's again the trauma. I mean, of course you're going to be affected. The thought that comes to my mind, like if you're an addict, think about it this way: if you get kicked in the face, it hurts.
Yeah. And
it'll hurt every time. Yeah. Every time it happens, you don't just come to a point where you're so numb to it that whatever. Okay, we'll move on. I mean, so for your spouse, if you have a slip with pornography, or you slip into your sexual addiction, it hurts, and it'll hurt every time. And so, the addict, be there, be present, understand that you're opening up some wounds and some pain. But
yeah, and again, I think one of the best analogies that was used, and it is the video "Helping Her Heal." It's intense, so be prepared for that. Like, for whoever the spouse is.
It was eye-opening.
Whoever the spouse is who has been, going through the trauma of having an addict spouse, I think it's kind of validating. The addict themselves, it's pretty rough. But there was an analogy on there that was shared that it was like, it was very helpful and eye-opening to me. They said a lot of people will see somebody who's physically abused, right? The bruised eye, the beat up, the scratches, the this, the that, and so they will be like, you are in an abusive, everybody will be sympathetic. You're in an abusive relationship, get out, like all these different things. But when it comes to emotional abuse, like an addict of pornography and affairs and different things that I've been through with him, nobody sees those scars. Nobody sees those bruises. So, including my spouse. You know, he doesn't necessarily see what's going on inside my head, my heart, and all those things. So it
I
can
recognize she's pained.
yeah. So it can be very hard to establish that empathy. But when you establish it, when you recognize how much pain they're in, and can like see what they need, it helps a whole lot more in the process. So,
and I think if there's been a slip, talk about it.
yeah,
I can tell you that as an addict, certainly you're going to have those low moments where you don't want to talk about it. Again, you want to forget it happened, you want to move on. But I've grown so much more and received so much more strength and been able to maintain sobriety and recovery for a long period of time now because we've talked about it. So it helps me, and I hope helps.
It does
Ashley.
help, but I would say be prepared for any response, because
yeah.
if you're gonna go tell your spouse that you've slipped, and let's be very honest here, you have slipped looking at another person in an intimate way, basically committing adultery, because it's said in gospel related form, even looking upon another person is considered adultery. So you, whether it's pornography or legitimately stepping out on the marriage, if you slip with that, how in the world do you think your spouse is going to react?
Yeah.
That's my only thing. And I'm being very blunt here because I get so sick of people tiptoeing around this and saying, oh, it's shaming. Well, guess what? It's hurtful. It is hurtful for the spouse who is sitting there hearing that their significant other, who you want to only have be yours, whatever, is going and looking at someone else. It's gonna be painful. I have handled it all different ways. I've handled it furious. I've handled it angry. I've handled it mad. Is there other ways? Just kidding. I've handled it other ways. I've handled it somewhat
you've been
well.
Supportive
I've handled it
and
supportive.
empathetic.
But I'm saying, for the most part, mad, angry, or furious is
So.
something that you can expect. Or there's times where I'm able to swallow that anger and pain down and handle it supportive. But you're going to handle it. It's going to be
do it a
handled
million ways.
all across the board.
There's
because,
no right way.
like everyone, you're going to
Just
have your
talk
good
about it.
days and your bad days. And so it's just going to be handled in different ways. So the slip-ups affected me in a lot of different ways. But eventually, the more we communicated in a calm, kind manner, and if he understood my anger and my frustrations, then we'd get through it. If he sat with me when I was super sad, then we'd get through it. When I was super supportive, obviously, we got through it pretty quickly because he was, okay. But again, that's something that should not be expected very often because it's painful. Think of what you're admitting to your spouse and why that would be so hard for them to hear. Just think about it.
Yeah.
And what I did all the time was I would say, like, what if I came to you and told you that this is what I had just done? Because he's never had to experience that from my side. He's never had to experience, I'm attracted to other men. I want this or I want that from another man. And when I put that in, a pretty blunt way, it's kind of eye-opening. So you might even try that because it's hurtful.
But I'll also say, don't let any of those fears keep you from bringing out and talking about what you've done.
Yeah.
Don't hide it. I've got a lifetime of experience of knowing that there's no healing at all. There's no sustained recovery that comes from not admitting to what you've done and sharing. It just doesn't happen.
And give your spouse some credit. Like with him for so long.
Don't just think you're going to get punished.
Even after
or
I found
angry.
out all of the years of pornography addiction and all of the affairs that he had, I'm like, I'm still here, so why are you still lying?
Yeah.
And I get that that's part of the addiction.
It is.
But it's one of those
Don't let
situations
it be.
where I'm like, give me the credit that I deserve. I am still here, and as long as you fight, I'll fight. But if you don't, I'm gone. That's kind of one of the things. Sorry, this one's pretty passionate and heated. The how did I deal with intrusive thoughts? I want to skip to that one and then go back to practical ways supporting, including faith. So how did I deal with intrusive thoughts, and has that happened to me? Yes. Intrusive thoughts have been one of the hardest hurdles to jump over, I think, for me in this recovery process. Because especially at the beginning and in active slips, the thoughts that would come into my mind. And as a woman, I'm already hard on comparing and different things like that. But the amount of thoughts, and I unfortunately, I know all the women that he had an affair with, so I had all of those comparisons. They asked, like, I was like wondering what kind of pornography my husband was into, because then is that what he's wanting for me? Same thing. I had all those thoughts. And one thing I would warn about and say be careful on, I asked a lot of details, a lot of details of everything, of the pornography, of the women, of everything. And it was hard. It was hard to get those details and everything. But did it affect our intimacy? Yes, it has. It has in a lot of ways. One thing you have to know is, again, my husband has been an addict to pornography, our whole marriage, and then he didn't give me very long of fidelity within our marriage. And so because of that, our intimacy life was never really healthy. It was never very strong. It wasn't horrible in my mind because I'd never had anything to compare it to anyways, but it wasn't like it was
something was missing.
I felt pressure a lot, and I didn't understand where the pressure was coming from because I never knew anything that was going on with him. So two things happened when all this came out. One, surprisingly enough, our intimacy life became a lot more close and connected because there was no longer this huge wall and barrier of secrecy and, all these other different things that were there. And so when that came down, it became a lot more like, oh, wow, this is what closeness and intimacy can be like. So on one hand, it severely improved. But then on the other hand, the intrusive thoughts came like a dam breaking and flooding me and drowning, because every single touch, it's like, you've done this with somebody else, or this is what you're watching, this is what you want, or, the different things that were very painful. So then every single touch, every single, thing that had happened between us, sadly enough, it makes me sad. It became just emotionally hard, all around hard. How did I get through it? I talked about it the whole time. Like, that's a lot of information, but the communication, and then the biggest thing, we talk about faith here, the biggest thing that we did, I feel like, is we truly invited God into our marriage. Yeah. Before anything intimacy, there's prayer there. Before any kind of talk about slip-ups and things like that, it was, God, help us to get through this, and by making him an equal part of our marriage, I truly believe that is a huge part of how we were able to make it through and see each other through his eyes. So that's really helpful. Another tip that was given to me was, my counselor said, envision a stop sign when those thoughts come in during even the day, but during intimacy and everything. Envision a stop sign, stop it, and think of something else. Or sometimes I would have to tell Chris, like, you've got to full-blown distract me. Talk to me about, anything in detail, a flower and how it's pollinated. I don't care, but get my mind off of where it's going.
There's a lot more work, I'll say, that goes into intimacy. So there's a lot more work that goes into it, but it actually is what makes it incredible. It's not, intimacy now is not what I thought it was in my mind, like what I envisioned from years of pornography, from a physical standpoint. But it's so much better from a physical, emotional, spiritual, all of that, because work goes into it. And respect goes into it and communication. And so talking about those hard things actually is making it better.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't avoid, you know, you can't avoid them. It's triggers, it's everything else.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, I mean, again, it's work. So when the work goes into it, it's great. When it doesn't, it suffers.
Yeah.
So.
And to just close, the practical ways to support my husband, the best thing that I could say is along the way, the best way I supported my husband was I took care of myself. I healed personally. I went to counseling. I did self-care. I increased my relationship with God. I did different things to where no matter what was going to happen between me and my husband and my marriage and my kids and everything like that, I was going to be okay. I was going to make my life choices, and my husband was either going to climb that ladder with me and we were going to both make it to the top, or I was just going to keep climbing the ladder. And the more I focused on what I needed to do to climb the ladder, and stopped putting all my focus on what's he doing, what's going on, what's this, what's that, the more I found some healing. And that's not to say that, you know, I didn't worry a ton about what he was doing or if he was going to have a slip, because that stuff just happens. It's just...
That's natural.
It's just the more that I focused on, I have to get through this with or without him, one way or another. So he's either going to shape up and whatever, or he's not. And I
Which is also something I had to decide.
Yeah.
You know, I want to overcome this with or without, like, if we get divorced right now, is it, oh well, or is it, hey, this is ruining my life?
Yeah.
It's...
And I'm to the point now, and this is just me. Obviously, all of this stuff is just us, and it's what we did. To each their own. We just want to share in case it's helpful, and I hope it is, and I hope we've answered the questions in some shapes and forms. But I will just say that I've gotten to a point that with my husband, if he slips, if he looks at pornography, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be painful. It's something I don't want to happen by any means. But because I've done all that recovery for myself, I've gotten to the point where it's like, and if it happens, it happens. And he can either at that moment choose to come and be open and communicate, and we'll get through it, whether it's tears, fighting, who knows. Mm-hmm. And we'll get through it. Or he's going to hide it, and one day I'm going to discover it again, and then we're going to go from there, you know? I just started to have to get out of my own head if I worried every second of every day, like people are talking about putting video cameras up in his work and putting all these kinds of different things on him. And sometimes that's really helpful for couples. Sometimes those extra filters can create extra safety and this and that. I chose not to do that. For both parties. I chose not to do that because my mind and the way it works, it was suffocating me. It was drowning me. And my entire life got lost in his addiction that I didn't even have. And I couldn't live that way anymore. So I started to just truly try to do what I needed to do to put one foot in front of the other. And that's what I started doing, just baby steps. I started making to-do lists that had absolutely nothing to do with his addiction and just give my mind a break from what we were experiencing every day. Because when this came out, I felt like it was my entire life. We were in 8 different programs to save our marriage. We were constantly talking about it till 3 and 4 in the morning every night. It just was life sucking. And it was like, it's not what life's about. It's not what I want to do. And so I put forth the effort for me. So as far as like, what ways can I support him? That's the main one, support myself. But then the other ones are kind of the ones I'd already mentioned. I did try to always be supportive and encourage of him, but I also knew, and this part is big, he had to do it himself. He had to make these decisions himself. We can be supportive as spouses, but I hear all the time, like, the wife say, I have to find a new counselor for my husband, or I have to
You find it.
I have to put this protection on his phone, or I think I have to go to the store and get a new flip phone or something like that for him. And I'm like, I
Yeah, you do those
just
things.
am, well, and I'm not even saying you do it, because to each their own. Again, you all make your own decisions.
Well, show the
I
initiative in
chose
making changes.
to never do that. If he wants to change, if he wants to get over this addiction, then he dang well better take the steps and processes to do so. I will not be his mother. I am not going to be his babysitter. I will not find a counselor for him. I will not go buy him a flip phone. I will not change his phone number. I will not get him a new email account that the other women don't have. I won't do it. If he wants to change, he will, and he did. So that is something I'm very thankful for. But again, that is just my suggestion, and that is just what we did. And so I really hope we answered your questions. I know this one was
If
passionate.
not, bring more.
Yeah, bring more, ask more.
Repeat them.
And I'm sorry if any of this is offensive or triggering in any way, because I know you're saying that's all fine and well because your husband did it. But what about if your husband's not? And we have kids involved and we have finances involved. So I am fully aware that no matter what, this is a horrible situation for anyone to be in, and we are so sorry. And we hope this helps in any way, because that's the whole reason why we did it. We'll be an open book with what we've done in our lives in hopes that it can help somebody else out there when we were so in the dark and drowning every single day. I don't want that for anybody else, because it's awful. So we are sorry that you're going through it, and we are absolutely sorry if it's offensive or if it doesn't work for you, because we understand everything, every person is unique, and we hope that you make it through. We hope that every person out there who is married to an addict of some sort understands that the marriage is worth it if both parties are willing to bring all their work to the table. If they're not, it's going to be a painful one-sided
It's an
marriage.
uphill battle.
So good luck, and thank you.
Thanks.